Where is the puck headed? In other words, what group of stocks will investors and traders pile into next? That's the topic of this video. But before we get into the good stuff, let me introduce myself in case you're new to the channel. My name is Justin Spittler. I'm a professional trader. I'm also the chief trader at Risk Hedge. Over there, I publish an e-letter that you can read for free. I also routinely share setups and ideas on Twitter. This is my Twitter handle here, jspittrades. I'm going to include links for both of those things in the description of this video, so you can track me down if you like. But enough of the small chat, enough of the chit chat. Let's get into stocks. That's why you're here after all. So before I get to the opportunity I want to discuss today, I think it's important to discuss just what's been going on in the broad markets right now. And the big story in the market right now is AI, and that's being led by NVDA. So NVIDIA is obviously a company that needs no introduction. It is the world's largest semiconductor company, and really at the forefront, a pioneer of this AI thing. So very exciting company that's been on an absolute tear this year. You can see the stock bottomed in October of last year and has since rallied more than 275%, breaking out to new all-time highs. And even today, we were able to open the week up another 3% higher. So after this massive move, which included a 25% jolt last week after the company shared its revenue guidance, many are wondering, how much higher can NVIDIA run? Is this the top? And when I look at NVIDIA's chart right now, I don't see any reason to think that this would be the top for NVIDIA. I think this move in semiconductor stocks is ultimately just getting going, but we're pretty extended right now. So we look at NVIDIA, huge move. We had a gap up today. We also had this huge gap up here. So just very extended by all measures. The daily candle today wasn't too concerning, but I wouldn't be surprised if we were to see a pullback, at least, fill this gap here. We could potentially over time come back down and either test this level here or even fill this gap here. And that, if that happens, that in and of itself, if it comes back and it tests that level and those levels hold, there's nothing particularly bearish about it, but stocks that do get this extended often come back down and test key levels. So it's something to be mindful of. But I think we could also see just a pullback in a lot of semi stocks, at least the extended ones. And I think you kind of got to put AMD in that bucket, because you can see here that it's just gone vertical the past few weeks. Tremendous move, really got a sympathy bid from the NVIDIA news. So quite extended by all measures. We also have this big gap here. And then today, AMD closed the day down 1.4%, which isn't a dramatic drop, but you want to watch how this stock trades in the coming days for a potential reversal. And if that does happen, if we do start to see money rotate out of these red hot semiconductor stocks, I think it'll find that money will find its place in other areas of the market. I don't just think everyone will go to cash. I think we'll eventually see bids for other areas of the market. We'll cover those in a second. But first, I want to showcase what happened in Broadcom today. So this was another stock that really benefited from the NVIDIA news. We could see that it broke out to this huge base, broke out to new all-time highs. But today, while at one point today, we were up about 14% higher on the day after this huge move up. So just got really, really extended. We had this nasty reversal candle. We had this big wick down, and it came on heavy volume. So I wouldn't be surprised if Broadcom is putting in some sort of local top here, maybe come back down and fill this gap down here, or at the very least, this thing could correct through time and trade sideways. So it's definitely a situation to be mindful of. I think you really just don't want to be chasing these high-flying semiconductor stocks here. Another name that I'm watching for maybe a potential pullback or reversal is KLAC. So this is Claw Corporation. Also broke out of a big multi-month base to new all-time highs. Its daily candle today doesn't scream, danger or anything just yet, but it's something you want to be mindful of just because of what we're seeing in some other semiconductor stocks right now. So if we do see a pullback in these semi stocks, where's the money going to go? Well, an area that I discussed in my previous video was I think we could see some rotation in these software stocks. So when you look at software is really the second strongest industry in the market right now, but it's not nearly as extended as semiconductors are right now. So you can see IGV just recently broke out of the space. It broke out above its August highs, so that's bullish right there, and actually hit the highest level since April of last year. So it's new 52-week highs, really constructive price action, but we're just not as extended as the semis are right now. When you look at IGV, it's only about 3%, 2.5% off this level. So if we come back and test that level, it's not too far down. It's not a big dramatic drop. So software stocks could be an area of the market that you might want to look at for some potential rotation out of these red hot, high flying semi stocks. And in my previous video, I shared some software names that I like right now. But I also want to discuss a different area of the market that I think's flying under the radar right now as a potential area where we could see some rotation into, and that's a Bitcoin miners. So how most people think about Bitcoin is that it's a risk asset. Historically, for long periods of time, it's traded, more or less in tandem with tech stocks, the Qs, but that hasn't been the case lately. If you've been watching Bitcoin lately, you probably noticed that it's massively underperformed what we've seen in tech stocks, particularly in semiconductor stocks. So it really hasn't participated in the upside lately. But I think we could see a potential catch-up play in Bitcoin and crypto. And if that happens, I think it'll be a very favorable environment for these Bitcoin miners. So when we look at this Bitcoin mining ETF, this is the We Gonna Make It WGMI mining ETF. We could see that it's pretty constructive here. I like how this is. You don't have a ton of price history to work off of, obviously, but you can see that it's back above the 30-week moving average, which is starting to turn higher. We have a series of higher highs, higher lows, coming out of this when it bottomed in December, and we're back above the rising 10-week moving average. And we've just been, since breaking out and reclaiming the January highs, this key level here, we've just really been consolidating and trading sideways. So you can see it a little bit more clearly on the daily here. I think there's a strong potential that we could break out to the upside, and we possibly see some speculative money rotate out of these high flying semis, and some of it can find its way into crypto, and that would benefit the Bitcoin miners. But ultimately, how these miners react is just going to depend a lot on how Bitcoin reacts. And so when you look at Bitcoin here, we can see the first thing I want to point out is, so this is the 200-week moving average. This blue line here, and historically that moving average has offered and acted as support during previous pullbacks. And we came back down and we've traded below it for several months here, and that a lot of people worried that Bitcoin was going to head to 10 or 12K, and you had people just very pessimistic about the price action of Bitcoin. But we've since reclaimed it, and you can see here that after coming up and testing 30K, we come back down, and we've tested this a few times, and it's sort of acting as support. So that's encouraging. When we look at the daily, one thing I want to point out is, so if you've never traded Bitcoin before, you probably you may not be aware of how much shenanigans there are when trading Bitcoin. So a lot of people were looking at Bitcoin here, and it was notable weakness. This looked like a classic topping pattern, but everyone was calling that out. And so I think we had a little bit of a fake out here, because you could see Bitcoin pull back, look like it was going to roll over and come back down and maybe test this 24, 25 level, or maybe even come back down and test the 20K level if things got really nasty. But it didn't. Buyers stepped in here when everyone was expecting it to go lower, and it's since built out this little mini base here. So overall, I think this is pretty constructive price action for Bitcoin, and I think this ultimately resolves higher. I think it had the opportunity to roll over, and now the strength we're seeing in tech stocks, I think this ultimately plays catch up and resolves higher. And if we do break out of this to the upside, I think we will most likely reclaim this 30,000 level, which acted as resistance previously. And if we break above that, the next area that I'm watching is this 40K level. So that's a big round number, psychologically important. But if you switch over to the 3-day, you can see it a little bit more clearly. This has been a level that's had a lot of interactions before. So I think it's not just a psychologically important level. I think it's there's some price history there that we want to be mindful of. So if that happens, if Bitcoin could rally from 27, 28K back to 40K, that would be super, super bullish environment for Bitcoin miners. So that's what I'm watching here. This is Bit Digital. this is the strongest Bitcoin miner in the entire market, and it was actually flying under my radar for quite some time. And the reason is it's just a smaller company. It's only about a $200 to $300 million market cap, so just wasn't popping up on my screens. But now that I'm looking at it today, and just really impressive price action, we can see that off the lows, this thing has rallied about 500% off the low. So it's really, leading the market. It's really massively outperformed the other Bitcoin miners. So if we do enter an environment where Bitcoin can really rally, I think Digital has to be a name you want to watch. Yes, it's had this big run up, but we could see the strength is notable. We were able to break out of the space here. You can see what happened once it broke out of that. And now this week had a huge day today, up 18%. And starting to flip this key resistance level here. So this is definitely a name to watch. You might think it's, pretty extended, just, on a weekly, just because of the tremendous strength it's shown. But it's done this when Bitcoin has not really moved the past few days. So definitely a name you want to keep a very close eye on. RIOT Platforms is another name that I'm watching closely. This is a name that I've tracked a little bit more closely just because it's bigger and more liquid. I think this might be the largest publicly traded Bitcoin miner. So having said that, the overall price action, while not as extended, not as strong as what we've seen from Digital, is very healthy, very constructive. So we can see here, bottomed in December and has put a series of higher highs, strong uptrend off the lows. And we've flipped and reclaimed this August 2022 highs. So now that we're turning that into support, and the rising 10-week moving average is acting as support here. So overall, very constructive action. And when you look at the daily, you can see it a little bit more clearly. Like this, to me, just looks like a bull flag. So I think it's consolidating above this support level that it's flipped. And I think it's just, building up energy for its next move higher. So RIOT Platforms is definitely a name you're going to want to keep an eye on. And the last name I'm going to discuss today, so the Bitcoin miners that I've discussed today, the individual ones I think are the strongest ones popping up on my screen. So this is CleanSpark, not a name that a lot of people probably know, but it's shown quite a bit of strength lately in terms of Bitcoin miners. We can see it's up 156% since December, and similar to RIOT, is looking very constructive. When we look on the weekly, it's a pretty similar story. You have the 30-week starting to turn higher. The 10-week has been turning higher. A little messier than the other two charts I showed, but overall the action is constructive. We can see here the 200-day moving average is no longer falling. It's starting to flatten out. So we could be in the early stages of a potential trend reversal here. And then the 10-week moving average has come up and just been really acting as support in this level. And I think while it's a little wild and loose, a little bit more wild and loose than what we're seeing from RIOT, this is overall constructive action. I think you're really just building out a bull flag here. So definitely a name to watch, and those would be my top 3 individual Bitcoin miners to watch if we can see a big move up to the upside in Bitcoin. I think these stocks could really offer tremendous returns. Just understand that if you're going to trade these things, to understand the personality of these stocks. So this is RIOT, a stock that I've traded before, and you can just see, even within this range, nothing's really happening within this range. It's just, essentially trading sideways, but the intraday swings can be about 8 or 9%. So you need to be able to stomach that kind of volatility if you're going to get involved in these names. And just one of the ways I handle trading these things, I usually trade pretty small size. You don't need a lot of money in these ones to see decent returns if the trade does work in your favor. So that's it for today. Hope you found this video informative. Until next time.